I told them not to bury it. I told them that pipe wasn't just some ugly piece of plastic sticking out of my hill. It was a floodgate, a lifeline, a warning. But Karen didn't care. She wanted flowers. She wanted compliments. She wanted to pretend gravity didn't apply to her yard. So she buried my drain line. And when the storm came, it buried her lies. I was sitting on my porch that night watching water rise up out of the ground like some angry animal, and I just stood there silent while her shiny Lexus floated off her driveway, spun in the current, and slammed right into a cedar tree 10 feet off the ground, mind you. That's when the screaming started. And you know what? No one could say I didn't warn them. They say every man builds his house not just to live in, but to bury his ghosts. Mine sat up on the edge of a low ridge just where the cul-de-sac and Hollow Ridge Estates tipped west toward the Greenbelt. Nice and quiet, HOA managed, but it was mine built with my own 2 hands and every lesson I'd learned over 3 decades as Grady Taylor Army Corps engineer. Most of those years I spent studying how water moved through land, how it whispered first, then gathered, and then when nobody paid attention, roared without mercy. After I retired, I poured my pension, my sweat, and every bit of stubbornness into that house. Picked the lot on purpose for the slope, steep enough to make you respect it, gentle enough to cradle beauty if you did things right. I mapped the drainage, laid every French drain and underground pipe myself, tucked retention basins under rose beds, and gravel built it like armor, not landscaping. See, my wife drowned 21 years ago in a trailer on the edge of an Arizona wash that overflowed in a freak monsoon. I was overseas, couldn't do a thing. By the time word got to me, she was gone. My son, just 4 years old, was found sitting on top of a washing machine surrounded by muddy water. I swore that day, wherever I lived, I'd never let water dictate terms again. That's why I built like I did. Why I never left the land's secrets up to chance. Why that 12-inch PVC line ran from the garage down the slope, through a narrow right-of-way into the city-approved runoff channel behind the HOA clubhouse. 8 years, nobody said a thing. The HOA even mentioned my system in their own emergency plan. Some called me the flood whisperer. But peace like dry ground never lasts forever. The day I first heard her, I was pruning the hedges after a spring shower. High heels on asphalt, a laugh that didn't belong in our sleepy cul-de-sac. She swept in with a red blazer and a gold HOA pin, just moved into the Craftsman house downhill. Karen Whitlock. By the end of the first week, she was chair of beautification. And let me tell you, she took that job like a general takes a hill. She caught me at the mailbox, called me darlin' in a syrupy drawl that set my nerves on edge. She complimented my rustic yard, then asked real sweet if I'd considered removing that odd pipe near her fence. I told her straight it was a city-permitted drainage line essential to the whole slope. She smiled like I'd offered her a dead squirrel and said, "Well, that does seem inconvenient." I brushed it off. Folks misunderstand infrastructure all the time. But she kept circling eyes, measuring my yard like she was mapping out a plan of attack. She brought 2 board members and some city code guy by snapping photos, no wave, just business. I'd seen that look in Baghdad, folks ready to ignore the plans if it suited them. She started working the crowd. Subtle stuff. Emails about unapproved drainage notes, about visual cohesion. Never mind my folder of permits, maps, and inspection sign-offs, all city-stamped. Karen didn't care about facts. She built alliances, one brunch, one fake smile at a time. Soon I was the intense neighbor with the trench system. Folks started glancing away at the mailbox. I started checking my drain line twice a day just in case. Old instincts never ignore a gathering storm. Our neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place folks mowed their lawns, waved, but didn't linger. Karen's arrival cracked that calm right open. Her beautification push swept through like a brush fire flower baskets on every lamppost, pastel flags, clutter band. But she didn't just add things, she started erasing what didn't fit her vision. Poor Mr. Lopez had to tear out the raised beds his late wife loved. The Ridleys lost their dog ramp because it altered the front contour. My slope was next. I heard them talking during one of Karen's garden walks. That exposed pipe is so industrial, one said. I'm sure he'll see reason, Karen replied, or we'll schedule a hearing. Next day, a note showed up on my door. Please schedule a landscaping evaluation. I filed it in a fresh folder, HOA Communications, 2024. It didn't take long for that folder to get thick. A few days later, Karen herself showed up by my property line, clipboard in hand, smiling like a beauty queen. So much potential, she beamed. I'm happy with it as is, I said. She nodded, sympathetic but cold. That pipe interrupts the natural flow. I almost laughed. Karen, that pipe is the natural flow. It keeps half the cul-de-sac dry. She didn't blink. Perhaps we could explore burying it for aesthetic streamlining. I told her city permits trumped HOA rules. Her smile sharpened. Standards evolve, Mr. Taylor. That's when I knew she wasn't just some busybody. She was gearing up for war. Soon after, I got the first violation notice delivered by hand, not mail. HOA seal all shiny. My non-conforming visual element disrupted shared landscape harmony. Not a word about safety or city approval, just aesthetic discordance. I held that letter at my kitchen table so long I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. I did what I always do. Gathered evidence. Called Vanessa at the city old friend from Core Days. She pulled up the permits. Your approval is ironclad. If they touch it, they're violating code. I had her print everything permit surveys, inspection reports. That stack went in my evidence binder. But Karen wasn't waiting. I came home one day to a landscaping crew dumping crushed rocks straight over my drain intake. 6 men, 2 skid steers, and a work order signed by HOA Chair Karen Whitlock. No city permit, no engineering review. I called the city inspector hotline while the crew watched. Vanessa's assistant promised a cease work flag. Karen showed up mid-afternoon, all sunglasses and white blouse. Oh, Grady, I didn't realize you were home. Isn't it shaping up beautifully? I told her she'd just blocked a regulated conduit. She smiled. Well, then we'll just trust the weather to be kind, won't we? You know that cold feeling when you realize the other side thinks they're invincible. I felt it right then. She had no idea what kind of engineer she'd picked a fight with. A week later, another envelope. This time I was accused of causing uncontrolled runoff because of their landscaping. Daily fines set to start if I didn't remediate. They were gaslighting, flipping the script. I documented everything. Sent formal warnings to the HOA, the city, the county flood coordinator, even their insurance. Silence. The sky darkened. Forecasts warned of heavy storms. Soil sensors I'd buried years ago started hitting red. Karen's perennial peace garden was planted directly over my emergency overflow. I watched them lay decorative stone and flowers over a ticking bomb. Karen caught my eye, waved like we were friends. I didn't wave back. Rain started. First a drizzle, then a deluge. My sensors screamed. I warned the couple downhill, Jason and Riley. Move your cars just in case. The others, well, they'd sided with Karen. That night, alarms blared. I threw on boots and rain gear, ran out. The peace garden was gone, replaced by a churning mud pit. Karen's Lexus, low on her drive, was next in line. I hit the neighborhood alert radio, flood breach imminent. Evacuate now. I ran to Karen's door, pounded until she answered wild-eyed. Move your car now, I shouted. She stared at me, and the ground answered a deep, metallic groan. Then the world split open. The buried drain exploded. Mud water rock shot skyward, and a torrent slammed straight downhill. Her Lexus spun, lifted off, crashed into the cedar. Karen collapsed into the mud, screaming, mascara streaking. Neighbors stared from their porches, stunned. All I felt was the cold, bitter truth: physics doesn't care about bylaws. At dawn, the cul-de-sac looked like a war zone. City crews showed up, but the damage was done. I had every second on camera, motion sensors, weather cams, trench monitors. The evidence was ironclad. Karen disappeared. No more garden walks, no more clipboards. She blamed the landscapers, then called it an act of God. But water doesn't sign work orders, people do. I took my binder footage and every ignored warning to City Hall. Vanessa and 2 engineers sat me down. I laid out the story fact by fact. When they saw the footage when the Lexus hit that tree, one of them winced. The compliance officer said this is public safety violation territory. They started an investigation and Karen became persona non grata. Suddenly, the neighbors remembered who'd tried to help. Jason brought coffee. Mrs. Lopez brought tomatoes. Folks stopped me to ask about rain barrels. The HOA sent a bland policy review email. Karen's name wasn't on it. But justice, I've learned, isn't always thunderous. Sometimes it's just the sound of water flowing where it should, steady, unhurried. And that's how things started healing in Hollow Ridge. A new ordinance required HOA infrastructure changes to get city review. Karen showed up just once more at a civil mediation, her lawyer in tow. She agreed to pay restitution, got banned from leadership, and her house went on the market, still muddy from the flood. The story spread local news, social media, even podcasts. Folks finally understood you can't bury the truth, not with flowers, not with votes. I stayed in the background. I built the new system, consulted on the repairs, helped neighbors learn how to respect the land instead of trying to tame it. Jason mapped the water flow. Riley started a newsletter on drainage and native plants. People talked to each other again, not about lawn colors, but about real safety. Karen's old house sold to a teacher and her husband, who ripped out the last of her beautification, planted tomatoes in rain gardens instead. Now when rain falls, I watch from my porch, coffee in hand, listening as the water finds its way through wider channels over reinforced grates, slipping past those apple trees at the slope's base. The ghosts of old storms are quieter now. Even my wife's memory is less painful. She would have liked how the land heals. There's a lesson buried here beneath the mud and paperwork. Authority isn't about who talks the loudest or who smiles the brightest. It's about listening to what's real, respecting what you can't control, and never pretending the laws of nature are up for debate. Karen learned it the hard way, and so did this community. You can't outvote gravity, and you sure as hell can't bury a flood. So let me ask you, when rules clash with reality, whose side are you on? Where's the line between order and arrogance, between improvement and harm? I want to hear your stories. Ever dealt with a neighbor in HOA or a leader who wouldn't listen until the damage was done? Drop your story below. Let's talk about what real justice looks like and how we can keep it flowing like water where it belongs.